Díomh a cóide agus fáilte arás. Hello friends and welcome back to the Chroí podcast. Elaine Ghoul is Anam Dum. My name is Elaine Doyle and it is with deep, heartfelt gratitude that I welcome you back to this sacred space. How are you getting on? Yeah, I hope everyone is keeping well. Um, I'm surprised and happy that I'm back here again recording so soon. I'm like, who this, lads? Who is this? Yeah, I'm feeling absolutely rebirthed after the winter, and there's actually just so much that wants to come true. Um, so I really feel like I could probably record a podcast daily at the moment. But obviously, there's other life things to tend to. So here we are a week later after my last episode, and it feels really, really, really good to be here back with you all in this sacred space. In today's episode, lads and ladies, I'm going to be speaking into the topic of the dark night of the soul. The dark night of the soul. And let's be honest, I'm sure it's something we all know very well. Very, very, very well. And maybe you've never heard of the dark night of the soul, but I can fairly guarantee you that you've in some way experienced it, which is a presumption, but to be human is to suffer. Isn't that what the Buddha said? Something like that. Life is suffering. There's a lot more meaning to that statement, but yeah, the human experience brings both the light and the dark. So to honest get the meaning, really excited to speak into this subject today. Tonight, actually, I'm in the dark here in Kerry, and yeah, I actually realised that this is quite a grounding practice for me. So embracing this as a spiritual practice on this dark evening. Anyways, before we get stuck in, I am just inviting you to take that sacred journey from your head down into your beautiful sacred heart. Tá mí mo Chroí inis. I am in my heart now. And just bringing yourself into that beingness, that eternal presence within you that is innately connected to suaimhneas agus síocháin, grá agus solas, agus an dia, agus an bandia. Yeah, that part of you that is connected to peace and love and to God and to the goddess. May we invite that part of us to be present here for the next however long. However long. That sense of stillness and openness and receivership. So yes, now that we are in our heart spaces, let me dig into today's topic. Um, yeah, I, as I said, there's lots moving right now. Like, I feel like I could come back and do part two of integration and regulation, and there's lots of things I need to come back and do part two of. However, I can only ever speak into what's extremely present. Um, and this topic of the dark night of the soul is something that I would have touched on in probably most of my episodes, but I really wanted to um, dedicate an entire episode to it because I suppose one of the things, lads, that I'm most passionate about, and I probably have said this before, it's probably the main intention, one of the main intentions for the Chroí podcast is to show like the real raw side of a spiritual awakening, or the raw side of the human fucking experience. Do you know, like, especially with social media and everything, we only see the highlight reel, which is great. We need to show people how good life can be. But yeah, I think as leaders of the new earth, we also need to be able to show the raw, authentic side. So yes, I really want to share as much as that, as much of that as I can in this episode. So I'm going to read out what my friend Eckhart Tolle, calling me friend because I love him, how he describes Dark Night of the Soul, and then I'll give you my interpretation of it. Um, Simply, he says, it's the death of the old self and the birth of the true self. I mean, I really love that. Really simple. Let me just scroll back up to the top here. Okay, just bear with me. So, Eckhart, the dark night of the soul is a term that goes back a long time. And it's a term used to describe what one could call a collapse of a perceived meaning in life, an eruption into your life, and a deep sense of meaninglessness, which sometimes can be called depression. Not make sense anymore. There's no purpose to anything. And it's sometimes triggered by an external event or disaster. And he also said somewhere, because there's a lot here, but he said it's usually the start of a big spiritual awakening. So it's this like eruption, for, in my own words, it's this eruption of our idea of what we thought we were and what we thought life was about. Right? It's this like, oh my fucking God, how I've been living my life has been a lie. How I've been perceiving myself to the world has been a lie. Okay. Everything around you crumbles. The crumbling, the death, the cognac, Kali energy is when everything, you question everything, which, you know, it's another word really for a spiritual awakening, because, and I talked about this in one of the episodes, I think it was the New Earth Consciousness episode, where a spiritual awakening is awakening to your divine origins, but also awakening to everything that is unconscious in your life and in your mind, everything that isn't truth. Right. So a dark night of the soul is similar. However, the difference for me is that there's a spiritual awakening, and then there's like, yeah, the more difficult side of the spiritual awakening, let's say, is the dark night of the soul. So it's like it's under the umbrella of spiritual awakening. And, you know, probably off topic a little bit, but maybe not, is the fact that, like, I worked in mental health for years, a large amount of time. And like, I used to actually, in one of my jobs, have the ability to diagnose people with anxiety and depression and everything. And I cringe, lads. I absolutely cringe now, because I'm like, they were actually having a dark night of the soul. They were having a spiritual awakening. They weren't depressed, like, you know. But anyways, that is really a whole other debunking mental health. Is a whole, and that I don't even want to say debunking mental health, because that might trigger. It's another episode. But a lot of the time, you know, there isn't actually something wrong with someone. They're having a dark night of the soul and they're waking up. It's the start of spiritual awakening. So for me, when I break down the term, again, a dark night of the soul, it sounds negative, and it can feel negative, obviously, because it's like this death of the ego and of self, or the unauthentic self, the false self. It can sound negative. However, for those of us who are deeply connected to the feminine and to the wheel of the year and to the darkness and the dark void, we come to the understanding that everything, all life, begins within the unknown dark place. And how that's why winter can be such a beautiful transformative time, because we allow ourselves to die and shed, like the tree sheds the leaves, to be reborn and completely recalibrated, and to have a metamorphosis into deeper alignment when the sun returns. So a dark night of the soul for me means that it's actually like, in the darkness, our soul actually comes alive. Because it's not the soul that's having the dark night, I don't think. The soul is always authentic and real and connected to the light. It's the human that's having the dark night. It's the ego. So it's actually a dark night of the ego, if you think about it. But the dark night of the soul, to me, means in the dark place, the soul comes in. Yes. Well, that's a really good. I'm really happy with that explanation now, which has just come true. Just going to pour myself some tea here. And have a tea break. So yeah, so then a dark night of the soul is actually a really, really beautiful thing. And I'm reminded by something that Siobhan Depere, I hope I'm saying her name right, an amazing woman here in Ireland, creative, a poet, and she's many things, you know, they're just some words to describe her. But she was doing a radio interview and she said, when you're having a really shite experience, you know, she was describing a dark night of the soul without using that term. She said, you have no choice but to allow spirit or soul in, because you're at the end of your tether. And that, to me, what a dark night of the soul can be, you know. And I've experienced this with myself, and I've also experienced it with family members who are not necessarily on this path, but through really traumatic experiences, I could see more of their soul than I ever have. And then when that difficult experience ended, their soul actually retracted and their ego came back. So, as we know, it takes a lot of devotion, time and energy to be the alchemist, to turn the dark night of the soul, the death of the ego, into a metamorphosis of light and love and alchemy and wisdom. Okay, so the real simple message, lads, that I wanted to get across this evening in this episode was, you are not alone. You are not alone. okay? And I think it's really important for us to remember that when we're in the absolute fucking depths of it, right? And to be so compassionate and kind to yourself, because the very small percentage of people, I don't know, is it like less than 5% that are actually awake to their divine origins? And it's growing, lads, and it's growing, and it's amazing, but it's still a small percentage. Those percentage of people, in my opinion, are continuously, sorry, not in my opinion, in my experience from the percentage of people I know, are continuously maneuvering dark nights of the soul, right? And I am friends with very, I'm going to put like a, in commas around a, inverted commas, very spiritual people. I hope that doesn't sound egoic, but I am, yeah, friends with people who are very, very connected to God and Source and the ancestors and spirit and whatever you want to call it, right? And yeah, even them and even me experience experiences that feel very unpeaceful and very hard. And a friend recently said to me, you know, Elaine, I've been navigating Dark Night of the Soul for the last few weeks. And I'm like, oh, girl, we all are. You know, like full moon in Leo there, it was like core wounds to the forefront. And I think the more we normalize this, the softer they become. We're not as attached to them as something wrong with us. So one of my friends said her heart was being cracked wide open. Another good friend of mine who is like, yeah, how would I describe them? Love, like full, they're the full embodiment of love. And they said that they were finding it very hard to be peaceful at all. You know, they were finding it hard to tap back into peace because of everything that was moving. Yeah, and obviously I have clients as well who are maneuvering deep core wounds. So, and all we see from their lives and my lives online, my life online, is the good parts. But I'm just reminding you that the shit is hitting the fan, or there is core wounds and dark nights of the soul happening for a lot of people on the path, or a lot of people in general. They just think it's, yeah, not normal. It's not normal. Um, and I won't go on a rant about like the matrix and the system where we're always meant to be happy all the time, and sadness and grief and all, and yeah, is it's not meant to be a part of it. And then that's when they start labeling people. But anyways, yeah, so where do I want to go with that? Yeah, it is, there's nobody I know, and as I said, I have a large community of people who are on the path. There's no one I know that has reached this place of like zero dark nights of the soul. Right, so just want to say that. And the mastery is in loving ourselves through that, loving ourselves through that, and being compassionate and soft and kind to ourselves. Being kind to ourselves. I know it's cliche, but love really does um, is the guiding light through the spiritual awakening. Okay, so that's, you know, a glimpse into what the dark night of the soul can be, what it means to me, my understanding of the term. And yeah, I've said this before, but from my work, working with clients from all over the world in a therapeutic capacity, I see that side all of the time, all of the time. And yeah, there's no one that's what's the word? There's no one that I know, um, what's the word I'm looking for, that can be protected against these things. Yeah. And even Eckhart Tolle in that um, description of Dark Night of the Soul talks about his own experience of it. I feel like he's probably reached a place where that doesn't happen that much anymore. But I don't know. I don't know him personally, obviously. Like, I'm sure he's in a relationship, so I'm sure shit comes up for them. You know what I'm saying? It's not about the shit not coming up, basically, lads. It's about how we deal with it, how we communicate, and how we bring love to the difficulties, really, is what I believe. But like, I'm continuously learning. Okay, so the next part that I wanted to speak into then was my experience of the dark night of the soul. And I'm going to sum it up so I'm not here for 4 hours. But it's something that I've been reflecting on since my friend mentioned the term again to me yesterday. Yeah. I actually going to have to take a break before I go into this, because it just feels like, whoa. Okay, let's do this. Of course, if you're a regular listener, a lot of this you might already have heard. But sure, look, as I say, there's no harm in repeating stuff at the moment, because I think, as I've said, there's a lot of things we need to remind ourselves of constantly, because, if we're in a very low percentage of people on the planet who are awake, there's a very little reference point of navigating a spiritual awakening or a dark night of the soul. Like, you're not going to pick up a newspaper, well, hopefully in the future. But yeah, Positive Life magazine is one. But you know what I'm saying? It's not in the mainstream. And someone actually who listens to the podcast reached out to me. A friend of mine who listens to the podcast said, thank you, because it can feel very lonely when you're on this deep healing spiritual path, and just listening to you speak and how you're maneuvering is really helpful. And that's why I'm here, just for people to know you're not alone. And this is, maybe act as some sort of, not a reference point, but just, yes, hopefully some balm to your soul. And yeah, before I just dig in there as well, it's like, I feel like it's really, really important for me to say this, and I'm not even sure what I need to say, but the essence is this, which is, I suppose there's a default mode of me going into teacher mode or preacher mode, maybe because I've done that in other lifetimes, or from my previous work. I was like, in like senior positions, or, in day jobs, right? Where there had to be, well, there just was this kind of like student teacher dynamic in workplaces, as there is. But like in this capacity, for triple spiral healing, my soul work, um, even lads, if you hear me slip into that mode, I just want you to know that I have no idea what you need in your life. And I have no right to say, I understand what you're experiencing, or I know what you're experiencing, and you need this, this, or this. Right? And I know I've said things like, I know people are experiencing dark nights of the soul and they have, shit going on. I don't know everyone's experience. Really, I just know my community and my family and the clients. And that's just a certain aspect that I know. It's this thing like I actually know nothing. And yet I know everything at the same time. Um, I just really, 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 really want to make that clear that like when I really come back into my higher self and truth, I don't have, I don't want to, or do I really have opinions on how other people should live or navigate their lives or their spiritual awakenings. I really don't have opinions on others. My intention here is to share my experiences and my decisions and my choices, literally just sharing them. And if that resonates, amazing. I know I'm going on a bit of a side tangent here, but this is obviously part of today's episode because, you know, it reminds me of a video I put on Instagram last summer about unsolicited advice. And I must share it again because it actually was really helpful for me. Where, like, how can we give people unsolicited advice? How can we know what's best for them? How can we, when each person, lads, right, has their own contracts, their own soul contracts in this lifetime? And soul contracts is like things that we've signed up to or said yes to in this lifetime. And even I notice in my friends, with my girlfriends that I'm friends with, and soul brothers, it's like even though we're like mirroring back so many similarities, and we're definitely walking um, similar missions, we're still very different. We still have had very different childhood experiences and many different lifetimes that vary, and ancestral traumas and all that vary. So, like, how can I expect that how I do it is how that person should do it when they have completely different life experience, soul contracts, and soul experiences? Um, so I hope I'm not contradicting myself, but that's like that's part of the the truth that I want to share, is that, or the intention of me talking is not to preach that this is how it should be, this is how it needs to be, because that is just another form of like patriarchy, isn't it? This is how the spiritual path should be. This is how you navigate it. And you have to wear like all the spiritual organic clothes, and you have to have a drum, and you have to eat organic food, and you have to homeschool your kids, and you have to have home births and all. And you see all of this online, and it's like, no, no. Let's not just farm. Let's stop farming another sort of dogma. Ceremony needs to be like this, and it needs to be like that. That's just another. It's another dogma, in my opinion. Right. So I'm sure if I listen back maybe to one or certain episodes, there'd be a hint of that. I don't know. I hope not, lads. I hope not. But please give me the benefit of the doubt in those scenarios, and know that take what you want and leave the rest, and know that my pure intention is not to give opinions, but more heartfelt experiences, and really trying to do my best to navigate my own experience and path, and to share that with others. And some of the reasons I'm talking about that is because um, I was sharing a heartfelt experience recently, and someone turned around and was like, well, in my opinion, and I was like, I really felt the that energy. And I was like, it just made me realize in that moment, and it was like their opinion of my experience. And I remember being like, whoa, actually, I don't want to have opinions really of other people's experiences. Unless like a client really asks me, like, what do you think I should, like, what, like they're asking you for like your solicited advice. Um, and yeah, I mean, I have to say, I actually loved hearing their opinion in a way, because I love questioning my own beliefs, especially if they're unconscious. But it just made me realize that a lot of the issues I feel that we have in society is this like war consciousness of I'm right, you're wrong. This is my opinion, and it's clashes with your one, and it's this war consciousness of right and wrong and things like that. And yeah, it really made me reflect on the fact that like I just want to be really compassionate and to other people's stories and experiences and listen, like actively listen instead of waiting to share your opinion with someone. And a sister shared that with me, she was like, I feel sometimes that people are not really listening to me. They're just waiting to talk and give their opinion. And a lot of the time, like, we just really want to be heard in our experience, in our dark night of the soul. So I'm absolutely on a tangent here, but there's no like there's no right or wrong way to do an episode, Elaine. Do you know, it's the same kind of thread, isn't it? So yeah, there's that. I feel like there was another thread with that. Let me just have a think. Yeah, so not giving our opinion or experience. Yeah. Let me pause for a sec. So yeah, just a little bit more on that thread before I finish up, which is as healers, it's really our default to want to like give our soothing opinion or advice to people to fix them or to help them. But sometimes it's really not the best thing for them. It's really about just listening and trusting that they'll come to their own realizations themselves, and they're not mightn't even be ready for your opinion or your experience because they're not where you're at. Right. So it's like, I mean, being trained as a therapist is like number one rule. Don't be coming in with your own experiences or opinions. Just let them be. Um, we just want to be heard. We don't want to be fixed. We don't want to be fixed. Okay, so I actually feel like that does lead me nicely into um, my own experiences of different dark nights of the soul, because um, one of the things I wanted to speak into was all these different opinions and suggestions that people gave me that I didn't ask for, that were actually not helpful. um, so yes, let's dig into that. And I might come back to that other thread because it's all one. It's all one. Perhaps as well, why I am now actually really dedicating a specific episode to this is because I actually feel, and I can't believe it feels a bit scary to say this out loud, not scary, but like, whoa, is that I actually feel like I'm really, 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 really actually exiting a dark night of the soul that has been going on for 4 or 5 years. Yeah, wow. So that's probably why I'm here, because now it's easier to talk about, in hindsight. Okay, so this is a big statement, but I feel it in every cell of my being. And perhaps the reason, and I'm not saying there isn't going to be more, like every time I bleed is a dark night of the soul, which is a whole other episode in itself. And winter will come again, and that will be perhaps another one. I'm not saying definitely, but like the trees and nature, things die in winter. So yeah, of course, I do see within myself that more healing on that is needed in different areas, but I won't get into that. But in terms of like, um, if anyone has experienced like a Saturn return or a dark night of the soul that's gone on for years, I definitely feel like I'm emerging from that finally. Like a massive amount of shedding has happened, and I'm stepping out of one of the biggest portals of healing in my life to enter into a massive rebirth, which of course will lead to another death. If you, do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, there's just a momentous amount of healing and shedding being done, and I feel like I'm stepping out of that. I'm repeating myself here, but it is hard to put into words sometimes. And I feel the reason why I'm finally stepping out of it, not just because it's spring, is because hearing Kerry, and I've talked about this in other episodes, I really, really, really went into the dark. I really went into the hibernation, hedgehog, burrow, cocoon, to really go into a lot of shadow work. And obviously, really been with my bleed and menstruation as well. But I feel like these last few months, I've just got through the crux of so many things that needed to really be alchemicalized and shed. So I feel like that's why I'm so passionate about this, is really, really utilizing the winter. But yeah, I've shared enough about that winter bit. But um, yeah, there definitely just is this sense now for me of um, not necessarily knowing exactly who I am, because I think um, there can be ego in that, but it's like there's a peace within me now um, that is comfortable and ready to be seen in my rebirthed state. So, what I mean by that is, before we have a dark night of the soul, we know, we think we know where we're headed and what we're about and what our mission is about and our 5-year plan. And we have this persona of ourselves, and people have their persona of us. And, you know, back in 2020, end of 2020, a deep, deep, deep dark night of the soul started. And I think for a long time, because I was so tender, and you'll know what what I'm talking about if you've experienced it, is like you're literally like a newborn. You've shed so much stuff um, in your life, internally and externally, that wasn't truth, that you're so vulnerable that you don't really want to be seen because you're too vulnerable, and you're like a little child, and it's like a newborn lamb, and you need to protect yourself and you need to go inward. And I think that's a part of the dark night of the soul, really being the hermit. But what I'm saying now is there's a part of me that's actually ready to be seen in my new self, my new authentic self. Um, like, obviously I've been showing up on my podcast for the last few years, but I definitely have hid myself away from social media. I used to be a lot more like allowing myself to be seen. Um, but now I feel like there's this ripeness that, like, no, I'm out of this massive dark night of the soul, and I'm ready and I'm comfortable and I'm strong enough, right? So that's what I want to get at, lads, that during the dark night of the soul, okay, it's very, very normal to not have a fucking clue. Not have a fucking clue what you want to do, who you are, what your mission is, and you do not want to. There's just no part of you that really wants to create anything for the external mission or serve, right? I'm saying, in my own experience, that's normal. I do see it in my friends and my community and my clients as well. And it's a shedding, right? And it's this concept of divine timing and knowing that there's specific seasons in our life where we are shedding and just being with the death and recovering from a lifetime of inauthentic living, right? Um, and I'm reminded by the Selkie story, the Selkie stories of the Selkie who's half seal, half woman, comes ashore and someone steals her Selkie coat so she can't go back to the sea, and she's living this life that really isn't authentic to her. She really wants to be back at sea. Um, and I imagine when she gets her Selkie coat back and she goes back to sea, she's like, spends probably a while recovering from the inauthentic life that wasn't really her true self on land. And that's my experience of the dark night of the soul, that like when you realize that your whole life has been based on fear and suffering, it can take years to unravel from that, in my experience. I talked about this in the last episode. Like, uh, I hated school. Like, I used to be in secondary school. Oh gosh, I remember like getting bet up, eating my lunch in the toilet cubicles, getting bullied in primary school, being mean to other kids in school, hated it, crying on the bus on the way to work in Dublin 7 years ago. It's not that long ago, right? So when you wake up and you realize that you can live from your heart space and you can have a great life, it can take a lot to unravel from that lifetime of inauthentic suffering. And I was watching a video by Teal Swan, and she was talking about, I love Teal, she was talking about how when we're living an authentic life, we are actually protecting a very vulnerable part of ourselves that is our natural essence. So when we're living in the kind of suffering matrixy life, we're not just disconnected from our natural essence, we're disconnected from our vulnerability. So when we go through the dark night of the soul, this vulnerability is exposed. And that's why you can feel like, I don't want to see anyone or go anywhere or serve anyone because I'm in the dark night of the soul. And this vulnerability that I've kept hidden for a lifetime is now here. Right? And this is why people are like going off to plant medicine ceremonies and doing all this, great work that needs to be done, or they feel they need to do, because there's so much grief and pain and vulnerability coming up through the dark night of the soul. I thought this was going to be a short episode. This is probably going to be another hour and a half one. Love it. So that's another little thread that I want to come in before I get back to my own experience is, please, 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 please enter into community when you're in a dark night of the soul or navigating a spiritual experience. I'm sure I've said this all along, but like, you can't do this alone, lads. And like, I'm talking about a community who really, really know what a dark night of the soul is. Someone recently, like a few months ago, someone's like, and do you like shadow work? And I was like, okay, I think you're a lovely person, but like, I need to be around people who are not asking me that question. And I know, I'm sorry, I'm really sorry if that sounds judgmental, but it's like, this is not about liking shadow work or not, is it, lads? Yeah, I feel, yeah, I'm gonna like send love to that person who has said that to me now, because I feel like there is, yeah, it's not the highest consciousness there, but it just, no, honestly though, at the same time, no, I really, 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 really need to be around people who get it. My friend Aoife and I, we always say, oh, that person, they just get it. Being around people who just get it, it's really, actually really important. And we have to shed connections that don't feel are really nourishing our dark night of the soul or awakening, to allow people who really get it in. That is actually really important. Okay, so coming back, dark night of the soul. Yeah, so we're shedding, like the snake, we're shedding through the dark night of the soul, right? So let me tell you, lads, right? I It's 2019, 2020, right? 2021. So I'm going to go through that timeline where I have, um, you know, in fairness, maybe I said this in the last episode, I don't know. I don't know where I've said stuff, so apologies for all the repeating perhaps, but my day job was 100 million% me doing my soul work. I absolutely love working one to one with people because now I realise that therapy and coaching and social work was actually me trying to help them raise their consciousness and come into their heart. It was the system and the services, the dogma that was not in alignment for me at all. And the other ways that I was completely disconnected, like crying on the bus on the way to work because I did not want to be living in inner city Dublin, working 9 to 5. So there's that other aspect. It's how you're doing your work, right? The system's built around it. Anyway, so I left that, and I go from this like senior position, earning lots of money. I was gonna get like a mortgage a year later, buy a small piece of land, a very small mortgage. I had everything set up, and then I just completely I remember my dad's face when I said I was leaving Templestry. I'll never forget his face. I thought he was going to drop dead. Thankfully, he didn't. Touch wood. That won't be for a long time. Okay, so the dark night of the soul was coming, and it was like it really amplified then. 2020, but the end of 2020, I had all these one-to-one clients, and I was like, no, winter was coming, and this dark night of the soul was really intensifying. It was like I actually have to say goodbye to all of that now for a while as well. Okay, so I stopped one-to-one work, and I was living off savings and other things, and uh, I've spent years, lads, not. I probably, I've said this before, not serving much, and it actually really seemed to bring up stuff for people. And I know I've said this before, even healers, right? Who were like, and this is where like unsolicited advice and opinions were like, oh no, you need to start like, you need to, you need to provide more for yourself and serve, and you need to do this and that. And people were giving me ideas of how I could navigate the dark night of the soul and serve. And I was like, lads, you're not getting it though. I actually can't right now. Like, I'm burnt out to bits. I'm burnt out to bits. Um, and, you know, is there things I would have done differently? Maybe, but like, can I change that now? No. Do I have any regrets? Absolutely not. Have I absolutely any regrets for giving it all up during the dark night of the soul? No, I don't. No, I don't. Absolutely zero regrets. And some of this is not exactly connected to the Dark Night of the Soul, but it's all under the umbrella for me. Is like during the Dark Night of the Soul, when it is connected, as I said, stopped my one-to-one work, which I absolutely love, and I love it again now that I'm back doing it. But I had to give it up because if you keep doing the same thing, you're not allowing new growth in. If you keep pumping out the same offerings and doing the same thing, it's not that you might never go back to it, right? But pausing it for a while, in my experience, was extremely helpful. And it was my friend George years ago. He could see right through me in 2020 when I couldn't. I said it to my friend today. Sometimes our friends, the blind spot thing, people see. This is where I love, when I ask for advice, I love getting asked advice from my friends, so like I do ask for people its opinion. There's a difference between solicited and unsolicited advice. But anyways, George said to me, he was like, I don't know how he phrased it, but it was something like, what would it be like to give it all up, or can you give it all up? And I was like, I I sat with that for months, lads, and I knew my soul was ready to do that. And when you're so identified with being the healer, me, it was being the social work, the therapist, the life coach, it's very hard to give that up. So like I knew as a teenager I wanted to help others, and when I was in UCD I studied social science. I was working with the Simon community, working with homeless people. I was always advocating and like doing volunteer work in women's refuge when I was in college. Then I did my master's of social work, and from that, when I qualified, and for 7 or 8 years I was the healer, the social worker, helping, giving. To give up that is actually quite hard. It's actually very hard. And I see that online. It's like people are continuously always serving and giving, and it becomes out of balance when we're not giving that up, at least for a couple of days a month when we're bleeding as women, or for a winter, and allowing ourselves to receive. And I actually think, as healers and as women, I can only speak for women because I am a woman, is it's nearly easier to give than it is to receive. And I'm still learning how to receive. That's a whole other episode in itself. But to just receive your own medicine and to allow yourself to be in dark night of the soul, knowing, you know what, I will serve again. I just don't know when that will be. And chances are you're probably having to serve your kids or loved ones or someone else anyways, never mind the wider community. And sometimes just raising a conscious family is more than enough, or remothering yourself is more than enough. um so yeah. Coming back to some of the things the healer said, when was it that that lad said that to me in Cork? I think it was 2021. He was like, you need to serve and you need to do this and have more of an income for yourself and blah blah blah. And I'm really glad I just didn't listen to him. And there was lots of things he said that were spot on. Always take what you want and leave the rest, lads, when it comes to anyone outside of yourself, right? Even your guides. Because you know what you need. And I remember thinking when I was sitting in front of him, like, you haven't a fucking clue of what it's been like to live a life that was going against my womb and my body for 30 something years. I'm only 2 years out of it. I'm still exhausted. I'm still burnt out. That's what I felt like saying to him. You haven't a fucking clue. I know I can provide for myself and make loads of money. Been there, done that. Will be there again. This is about coming home to like peace and regulation and God. And yeah, another I think it was the same year I did get another reading of an amazing woman, Florrie. She's fucking amazing. And she said, no, 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 you just need to slow down and focus on your own healing. And it was, lads, I'd recently got another reading off that person. First time I got a reading off her since 2021. And like, why didn't I do that sooner? I think that's the difficulty receiving again. Yes, I need help on this path. Yes, I actually need external validation right now because I'm navigating a dark night of the soul or a deep spiritual awakening. Um, as I I needed the reading as I exited the dark night of the soul. I'm like, can you just support me about how I'm actually really going to serve now? And it was so helpful. So helpful. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I've been trying to do it solo for the last however long, last year with this. I really wish I'd reached out to her sooner. It's okay to want help or need help. This thing of like, to do it alone, bullshit. So there was people luckily validating, rest, don't worry about working. And another healer, what year was that now? 2022, 2023 said, don't worry about working. Don't worry about it. We see, spirit can see the mass amount of shedding and healing you're doing. And that was a deep portal of grief at that time. I had a massive chest infection and everything. There was so much grief coming through my channel. Like, I could definitely, I could be here for hours, but I am trying to sum it up. Sum it up. So thank God for Carmel saying that to me. I really needed to hear that. I think as women, giving, or this patriarchal wounded of like being productive and doing. It's so built in us, especially like from the famine as well in Ireland. It's like, if I'm not doing and I'm not working, I might actually die of starvation is built in us. So like this soothing encouragement of, no, you're okay, it's safe to relax, it's safe to just give it up for a while, is really needed during the dark night of the soul, I believe. Yeah, so where was I in that? Oh yeah, I had another, seen an energy healer, Reiki practitioner in Cork, and now in hindsight I can see why she was saying what she was saying, right? But it's taken me years to actually take on that advice. So she was probably expecting me to make those changes instantaneously. It was like, you need more structure in your life. You need to root yourself and ground yourself and serve. But sure, like, I was so dysregulated, lads, and I was so ungrounded in myself that it's taken me until now to really find safety and groundedness within. So, do you see what I'm saying? It's like, sometimes the dark night of the soul, people are going to say things to try and fix us and get us out of the dark night of the soul, but there's a process that the dark night of the soul has. And I don't know if it can be quickened up in a way. I don't know. In my experience, I can, in hindsight now, I can see what they meant, but I can also see that there was a process there, and that's just how it is. That took me years to get to. That I'm more regulated and grounded in myself. Now I can serve again properly, because how can I serve if I'm not rooted and grounded? I'm just going to burn myself out again, because it's not coming from a really, really nourished, rooted place. Yeah, maybe that makes sense. Maybe it doesn't. It does to me. And I remember her saying to me during the session as well, she was like, Celtic shamanism, your guides are saying they want you to teach, settle down and teach, you know, Irish Indigenous shamanism, and I don't even wouldn't phrase it that way, but whatever way she said it, it was like that. And I know my soul is here to do that, bring through the Irish nature-based spirituality and druidry and those threads. But at that time when she said that, I was like, I haven't embodied that at all yet. Never mind teach it, like, it was like, just, can we just slow down here for a second? And if my guides are saying that, I need them to slow down as well. Slow down. Do you remember? When's the last time you were in the human body? Can you remember the density that's in this body? Please, slow down. Slow down. Um, yeah. And there's been other people that I've talked to who they said they asked their guides to slow down with them. And if your guides, again, if it's anything outside of yourself, just trust yourself if it doesn't feel right. And working with guides and stuff, it's a whole other podcast where we really want to be only working with guides who are of the true light, connected to God's source and love you unconditionally, or not putting any expectations on you. Definitely had my experiences of unhealed ancestors and all that wanting to work with me. Good luck. Yeah, getting off topic with that. So was I? Yeah, so what I'm trying to get across here, lads, is that in my experience, you got to allow the process, and a time will come, in my experience, I have to keep saying in my experience, where you will exit it. Of course you will exit it, you know? But it can't be when other people want it to end or expect it to end for you. Like, even my mom was kind of like, when is this going to end? When is she going to just be okay again? Because in my, my mom was like living at home, seeing me going through a dark night of the soul. It wasn't easy for either of my parents, God bless them, but Jesus, they were amazing support to me, in fairness. Um, yeah, there's just a natural process. And when women say to me, I just don't feel like I can serve right now, I'm like, I get it. I've been there. It's okay. I get it. Um, and just be very mindful of other people's projections or trying to pull you out of it, you know? Um, and at the same time, right, there is ways in from what I've done that I was able to serve without feeling exposed or without it bringing me out of my own process, which was my podcast. And back, I don't know, was it a year or two ago, I started one-to-one work, which was, yeah, my bread and butter and something like I could do with my eyes closed, that kind of way. So it wasn't like overly stimulating or dysregulating or ungrounding for me. Because when we're doing new stuff, it can be very stimulating, serving new soul work. So my friend that said she was going through the dark night of the soul, and one of the things that was coming up for her was that she was doing everything, but she felt like she wasn't doing anything. And I felt like it was her soul. And this woman is amazing. Like, she's doing a lot with conscious parenting. Like, she's a phenomenal mother, um, and doula and many other things. But I did sense that her soul was wanting to serve in some way, like really wanting a stage for the wider community. And she has an idea of a podcast. And I said to her, like, in my experience, it's really a nice way to serve without having to hold space on a large scale. So, hope I'm not contradicting myself, but even in the depths of it, I do believe there's some small way we might be able um, to serve at a specific point of the dark night of the soul. Now, we have to remember that I did a period where I didn't have the podcast. I wasn't doing one-to-one work. I was holding circles in Wicklow, but I was doing it with other people and they were organising the circles. So I was really just showing up. But there was periods where I wasn't holding space at all. Okay, so I'm saying that's okay too. And at the same time, um, I do believe that there is very nourishing ways of sharing your voice even through the dark night of the soul. Maybe that's a newsletter, or just having like some sort of a gathering with your friends where everybody shares a poem or a song, or of what you're navigating, expressing your journey. Because the reality is, right, there's so much wisdom in the dark night of the soul that your soul really wants to share that. Like, your soul isn't, throughout it all, um, is really, really, really happy because it's growing and evolving and it's coming more on board. Um, so, yeah, definitely feel like I'm sharing two messages there. Pull back, give yourself permission to do nothing, and at the same time, yeah, exploring exploring ways where very simple ways that we can share our soul, because there's just so much gold in that. I mean, look, a lot of love songs are definitely written through dark nights of the soul, so much creativity comes through then. So even if you're not sharing it, creating it, and then sharing in a way that doesn't feel overly taxing. Yeah, because the reality is, well, in my experience, that like, um, having a podcast and sharing stuff in a more simple way is very different than holding a lot of space for people. Helping a lot of one-to-one clients or holding circles and ceremonies. It's very different. Um, I was saying that to a friend. She's feeling like it's holding spaces a lot as she's a child now, and it's like there's other ways to serve that are softer and more feminine for a while. Not even more feminine because everything. It's not. It's yeah. Different seasons in our lives will serve differently. You know, but um, for many of us, it's like we've such ancient souls that have been preparing for this lifetime for a long time that the soul becomes restless um, if it doesn't have some sort of an avenue. It feels stifled. I feel that's what I've learned. So I suppose if I was to make any changes, if I could go back and change time, I would have started the podcast sooner because it was a year of me feeling afraid to put my soul song out there. But it would have done me good to have that little bit of structure in place. So that's why I'm encouraging people to do those sorts of things, because I can see in hindsight how a little bit of more soul song space would have helped even in the depths of it. Because there's a lot of medicine in sharing the real life raw authenticness of it. Because as I have experienced, it went on for years and years. So if it is potentially, if you're feeling that length of time, then it's a long time not to have your soul sharing some sort of creativity. And as I said, it can be in really minimal, nourishing, soft ways. Whether it's just, yeah, your close knit friends or family that you're sharing the experience. There's something very magic in that. And I think it's a pity not to document these momentous, magical experiences in some way or form. Another way I've done it is journaling, and I've kept all my journals over the past 5 years, which is just going to be so juicy for my grandkids or whoever to come across. So there's that. The next thing that I wanted to come back to as well was that, I talked about at the end of 2020 giving up a lot of the one-to-one work because I actually had recreated the day job in my business and was nearly burning myself out. I took on way too many clients because that's what I had in the day job, so many clients. So we have to be very mindful, I think, of not bringing the day job into our soul work because we're just creating the same kind of uh, burnout possibilities or matrix scenarios, and you definitely see that, right? Well, I've definitely witnessed that because I've nearly done it myself, or I did it myself for a period. Wouldn't say, yeah, I was definitely. I think the main thing is, lads, if something burns you out, maybe a bit of a strong statement, but it's not the actual job that led to the burnout. It's sometimes our lack of groundedness and rootedness and boundaries. I said that to my therapist. I was like, Tempest Street wasn't the problem. It was my lack of boundaries, and I was in flight or fight mode my entire life. So um, everything had the potential then to burn me out because I was in a state of stress, anyways. And yeah, it's a big realization. Um, Obviously, these scenarios, it was easier for me to come out of flight or fight when I wasn't in those stressful scenarios as well, obviously, because there was a high level of stress in those environments as well. But when you're already in a state of stress, it's just heightening it. Um, yeah, like, so the importance of serving and rooting and doing from a regulated place that is no longer in flight or fight mode is essential. And I knew that I wouldn't serve um, on a consistent basis until I'd really found that level of rootedness and groundedness within, which is what I feel now. And there's honestly a lot more of that healing to happen, but there's definitely a strong root there. Anyways, I'm going off a bit on a tangent there, but um, just to come back. Okay, so yeah, I'm saying I stopped a lot of the one-to-one work, right? And this is where I'm so glad, because in that period where I stopped the bread and butter, right? Say, my friend George's like, "Can you give it all up?" I gave it all up. I was in Wicklow. Um, and oh my goddess, lads, did I find absolute like joy, and did I come home to my soul? Yes. Fucking hell, like, lads, I spent a lifetime. I was the child in the family who did exactly how. Now, I was a rebel as a teenager, but like, I went, did my degree, did my master's, went straight into a job, moved to Australia, didn't even go traveling first, got a job, worked in the army, worked in a school, had all these amazing jobs, climbed the ladder in my career, did all the right things. And, when I finally, I think it was when I really moved to Wicklow, and I don't know what age was I, 33, 32. I felt like I was a teenager again. I was like, oh my God, I'm finally getting to live this like carefree hippie life. Like, I needed years of that. Years of just like going to Scotland and being on the land for weeks on end and not having a care in the world after a fucking lifetime of routine and structure and serving. Fucking hell, like. Fucking hell. Sorry for all the cursing, but the dark light of the soul brings it out. So just allowing yourself to make up for lost years. Now, I've had an amazing life. Like, let me tell you, when I lived in Australia, I did end up doing a lot of traveling. I lived a good life. Like, my guides are like, hold on there now. Even when you were in the day job, like, I did have a good time, especially when I moved to Australia. We really did, have a nice lifestyle. But there was always a level of like, right, it's a treat, okay, well, I have to go back to the day job now. And the fucking dread on a Sunday night, like. Do you remember like anyone in my age bracket, like Glenroe? When Glenroe would come on, it was school the next morning, and the dread, hated school, hated Sundays, having to go back to the day jobs, like that level of dread of always having to go back to something that you didn't really feel in alignment with. When I left the day job and then when I moved to Wicklow and all, it was like this new sense of freedom. I had a lot of time, I lost time to make up for, I feel, my soul did. Just having the fucking crack dancing on the beach, you know what I mean? And obviously, lads, now my work is to bring people into that lifestyle. So now I see how you can live that lifestyle and serve. But there's a time to just explore it and be in it without sharing with others. And someone said that to me, just enjoy this without needing to share it or give it to others. There is a time where you have to give it back. I see that as well. So just to come back to that, right? I can reflect back now. I can see the different massive um, things that my soul got to embody during that time of completely giving it up, giving things up. And I'll just list a few of those things. Coming back to the herbs, right? And the plants. Like that took so, not so much time, because that sounds like it's a bad thing, but like been so, like, I grew up in a garden centre. Both my parents are like horticulturalists. My dad's a landscape gardener. Um, so I knew a lot about plants and vegetables, but I had no idea about like wild herbs and plants, the medicinal medicine all around me. My dad would have known them, which I later found out, but he never told me about them. My mum grew herbs, and grew up putting nettle rinses in her hair, but that wasn't passed on. It became, yeah, like not cool. So, like, I remember thinking, I'm so glad I gave up everything because I need, my ancient soul needs to remember all the ancient um, practices of my ancestors in terms of like plant medicines and not psychedelics like the hawthorn and the rose, which I now work with on a daily basis, mugwort. What have I had today? Meadowsweet, elder, you know. Um, and like I have friends, you know, the yoga teacher here in Catersavine, like she's in her 20s and she's been deep on this path since early 20s. I didn't have any of this in my early 20s, mid 20s. So it was like I just, not that I had a lot of time things to make up for, but I felt like I kind of did. I was like, I just think I remember being in Scotland and my friend Peter was talking about picking the elderberries, and I was like, this grief washed over me. I was like, I don't know what they are. And I was like, that's when I was like, I am devoting so much time now to remembering the plants and the wild herbs. And that took an awful lot of spaciousness and devotion. And my God, am I glad, because the plants have really, really, really massively, massively supported my internal awakening. And it just, the plants change your vibration and frequency. You know, I really believe that. Um, and another big thing for me was when I lived in Wicklow. I was living with a woman who free birthed, and I met a free birth doula. And that was a massive period of time for me where I was really wakening up to birth and how I want to birth. And again, I needed an awful lot of spaciousness to really delve into that and my own birth and rebirthing myself. So, you know, I feel really proud of myself now that I'm at this place in my life where I don't even have children yet, but I've gone through all these initiations with the plants and with birth that, you know, when I am pregnant, that I've a lot of gifts to pass on, ancestral gifts and medicines to pass on to my children. And obviously, that was my spirit babies bringing me to Wicklow, bringing me to all these amazing people who helped me to become my true, raw, wild, authentic self who's connected to the plants and sovereign ways of birthing. And all, you know, just want to say there's no spiritual or right or wrong way to birth, but I'm just sharing my own experience with it. Okay, I'll pause there for a minute. Yeah, so I'd probably be here for a few hours if I was go into everything that I needed space to find. So I needed to stop to find myself, right? I needed to stop all the serving and the bread and butter stuff, right? To find all these things, and just to touch on a few other things. I remember the first time I met my friend Aoife at the Hill of Tara, and it was Buíochas 2021. And I was like, where have you been all my life? And she did an amazing fire ceremony for Buíochas. And after the fire, you know, people were singing songs and the medicine. And I was like, oh, where have these people been? This is what my soul wanted to be doing for a long time. And there was grief and joy with that. You know, I was like, I finally found my people. So just, you know, allowing yourself that, like, and that did take, you know, as I keep saying, giving it all up to really, you know, find your true essence. So basically, lads, I did that for years, you know, um, years of just like shedding. Like, I spent a lot of time in the sacred waters during the dark night of the soul, because the sacred waters cleanse and purify all that is not in alignment. And as I say that, I'm like, is there that much stuff to shed? Absolutely. Absolutely. So, and you know, Eckhart talks about this in the New Earth book, like the pain body and the collective pain body, ancestral trauma. What we are doing right now, healing our lineage is absolutely momentous, and it's it's beyond, I think, what we can even imagine, the amount of work we're doing, right? So I feel, and I've said this before, like, we're coming out of a dark time in humanity where we've been disconnected from our hearts and our true origins for thousands of years, a long, long time. And we're the first people in our lineage to live in our hearts and to heal for a very long time. Unless we're, coming from, yeah, a place where there isn't a broken lineage, but still, there's still the core wounds and the separation after the fall. So we're coming out of a time of darkness, and it's a lot of healing when we are that person in the lineage, right? Um, like what I have felt in my body, grief and pain, is momentous. Um, it can't be put into words, really. It can only be felt. You'll either get it or you won't, and I know a lot of you get it. Like healing stuff that I'm like, this isn't even mine. Like, which grandmother and grandfather was this belong to? Because I didn't experience this growing up, but I can feel it. I can feel it. And we can't spiritually bypass what's in the cells from our ancestors that's passed on. We can't spiritually bypass that. And then you've got trauma from other lifetimes, and you've got collective pain bodies, and you know, living in a world where the majority of people aren't living from their hearts is traumatic in itself. So yes, depending on then our life experiences, our childhood, yes, the dark night of the souls can be very intense and last a long, long time. And yes, some of my friends never had the day job, never had that kind of form of suffering or disconnection. Now, I'm not saying all day jobs are suffering or disconnection, but I did experience a lot of like burnouts and crying on the bus into work, and they haven't had that, so they're not recovering from that. So, as I said, everyone's experience is different, so you can't compare. Um, and that's something I want to say, right? I knew when I left my last day job in Dublin, I was so burnt out to bits. I knew, lads, it was going to take years of me pulling back and resting. It took me a while to listen to that, but I eventually did. And I remember I had Rebecca Campbell's Oracle decks at the time, and she talked about the void and the seasons in our lives and stuff. So there was a little bit of reference point, but there was nobody really. And now I did have a few healers, obviously, that said just rest, but there was no one that said to me, Elaine, this might take years and years. I think Rebecca Campbell talked about like a year or two where she didn't create, but like I had no reference point where someone said 5 years, 6 years. So I really had to trust. So this is my reference point to you if you feel or you're having that amount of time needed as well of a dark night of the soul, right? It was hard. It was really hard because I was like, will I ever want to create or serve again? Like, I had completely lost the desire to serve on a large scale. And that's actually okay and normal, lads, because look at nature. Nature doesn't bloom all year round. I was talking about, like, that I really try to do as little as possible when I'm bleeding, and someone said that just isn't practical. And I internally thought, it's not practical to go all year round and all month round. You know, that's my understanding of living in sync with the seasons. I pray for the day where workplaces close down for the winter. One is that, it's practical to, and so does Facebook and Instagram, but we'll keep praying. Until then, we'll create these structures ourselves if we can. But so yeah, where was I going with that? Yeah, in my experience, a time will come, lads, where the rebirth will come after the dark night of the soul. But you can't force it. Even though healers were telling me all the right things, I still had to go through my own process. I can't deny that. How can I? Because that's what happened. um, it was like I was in complete newborn mode. You know, just feeding myself was enough. And luckily, thank you, God and Goddess, that I made a decision to move home back to my ancestral land with my family in January 2020. Thank God, just before lockdown hit. And I was in community with my family during the depths of my awakening, where we were, you know, I was growing vegetables and we were cooking for one another. Then I moved up to Wicklow and I was living in community. I don't know how you would navigate a massive, long, dark night of the soul and completely provide for yourself and feed yourself. Like, we really need to move into community spaces if we can. If that means, you know, moving in with family, if it's healthy, physically, emotionally, spiritually to do so, then do it. Thank God my ego took a seat. And, you know, my mum will even say, like, we had a great time during lockdown, you know, because we really were able to nourish and support one another. And she, in her own ways, was having an awakening too, for sure. Um, yeah, I mean, I'll just talk about it briefly. Like, yeah, I'm sure I've said it before and I've probably said it in this episode. Like, I can't remember now. There's so many things coming through, but um, yeah, like living off savings, just praying and hoping money would come in from known and unknown sources, just like getting by. Probably racked up more credit card debt than I really would have liked to. um, that's something I would definitely change if I could go back. But it all is as it is, and money will come in to pay off these things. But I definitely wouldn't recommend that. But I can't recommend what's right and wrong for you, to be honest. But I think for me, really what I've learned now, finally, is that if you're going through a dark night of the soul or you're wanting to take the winter off, for me, it's been important to live sustainably and minimally and to live within my means now. And seeing I'm actually well able to sacrifice X, Y, and Z because it's more important to have time with my bleed and the winter and the dark night of my soul. Now, I obviously do have a very good level of abundance in my life. There's things I will not compromise on, like my organic food and things like that. My car and yeah, my organic food, and been able to follow my heart in terms of things that I feel I really need to be at. But I've definitely learned to live a lot more minimally, which has been really, really good because it allows me to pull back and not serve when I know it's not coming from the right place. Um, because sacrifices are sacred thresholds where we're really having to pick what's more important here. Um, and I don't know why this is coming in, but I was in the sauna the other day, and you know, a woman was talking about her son and how sad she feels for the life that he's living, like working all the time just to pay a mortgage in Dublin, and she feels like it's just not. Yeah, he's miserable, and um, you know, she's like, "Gosh, there's no other way," and I was like, "Oh no, there is another way, and I'm living it." And she was like, "God, you're very lucky. You're the lucky one, though." And for those of us on the back on, this is, I suppose, when you're living in a first world country, and you have a lot of choices available to you, that it's not about luck, it's about the choices that you make. I could have stayed in that kind of scenario in Dublin, but the reality is, you know, a lot of people aren't willing to make these sacrifices. Um, but if you, yeah, for me, it's been really important and actually quite easy in the end to stick with my 09 car and to live buying most of my clothes on Vinted, which is an amazing secondhand website, and living abundantly. But for me, and she said, God, sure, you're probably the richest woman in Ireland, so having that sort of lifestyle where you love what you do. And I said, yeah, I feel like that. Not necessarily financially right now, but you know, abundance is freedom, spaciousness, connection to God. And that's what, like, when you really delve into the dark night of the soul and allow the rebirth, that's what happens. True abundance comes in. authentic living. Okay. What else on that? Let me just see what else needs to come through there. Yeah, so just another point is that, like, as I reflect on my dark night of the soul that went on for years, you know, it's okay to make mistakes. And, my godmother said that to me in the midst of it. Um, don't be afraid to make mistakes in life, Elaine. And who really ever says that to you when you're in the matrix? Or, I really needed to hear that, because I think the schooling system is like, oh, you have to get it right and get it correct and do things right. And I think, especially during the dark night of the soul, it's about like shedding all of that and just learning as you go. Is there things I would have done differently during my dark night of the soul? Yes. Did I make mistakes? Yes. That's okay, because it is a very unknown, uncertain, void, dark place to be in, right? And there's no roadmap. There's not much reference point for how to navigate a spiritual awakening or a dark night of the soul. So you're just going to have to take it day by day, week by week, year by year, and just trust your heart and your womb. Um, Trust yourself, Um, trust, like the divine, trust God, trust in spirit, and really allowing the ego to die, because the ego that thinks right and wrong, and there's this right way to do things, like really, that sacred journey into the heart. Um, yeah, there was something else I was going to say there. Let me think. Yeah, that reminded me when I said womb, was that, like, during the last few years from pulling back, I got to, and I've spoke about this, um, is I got to really, really, really deepen my connection to my menstrual cycle and my womb, which is probably the most important spiritual practice for me. But that took an awful amount, a lot amount of time to connect with, like years. Um, and it was in 2023, June 2023, that I really, really started to devote and delve deeper into the womb mysteries and menstruation. So that's a year and a half ago, and like, it's been absolutely, yeah, life changing, So to delve into all these ancient mysteries and ancestral ways, plants, womb mysteries, sacred sites, I got to travel all over the Celtic Isles these past few years. Um, yeah, so it's allowed me to embody and remember a lot of wisdom in a short amount of time by just pausing everything. Because when we're going through the dark night of the soul and we're metamorphosing, we're like transfiguring ourselves, as in we're changing our feckin' cells into like truth and love, we need a lot of medicine to help us with that rebirth, death and rebirth. So, the energy at the sacred sites and the plants and the womb and all of this is the medicine to get us through the dark night of the soul. I believe, for me anyway, is the medicine for me, delving into the mysteries and bathing in the sacred waters and praying to the sacred fire and everything is what I needed to get through the dark night of the soul. And community, community. Um, and a lot of these things are free, Um, but like, also getting professional support if needed as well. I definitely am glad I, pumped a lot of resources into what I needed. Body work, massage, everything. Um Another thing I wanted to share, I also have shared this before, is, you know, I do believe, and it's spoken about in a lot of circles, is that, yeah, collectively, the planet is in a dark night of the soul. You know, the wars and everything's going to intensify before it gets better, right? So we're seeing all the disconnection as we birth this new earth and golden age. Um, it's like purging. You have to purge the old to birth the new. And it was Andrew Smith, probably again said this before as well. Andrew Smith, astrologist based in Wicklow, an amazing astrologist, said that this time we're in, and this was a couple of years ago, this is like the inner, it's like a woman when she's bleeding and she's shedding. This is what's happening collectively. We're shedding all the old ways of being. And that was happening on a collective level. So, yeah, there was many people I met who were like, I've just spent the year in an inner winter. There's many people that are having a dark night of the soul that is lasting a long time. And depending, as I said, on our life experiences, our dark night of the souls will have different different time periods on them. And again, you know, it's not that like I'm completely out of the dark night of the soul, um, but there's definitely a stage of it that feels complete. You know, I hope, yeah, I'm sure you get what I mean. And now there's a lot of newness again about, okay, how do I show up in the world now given this new authentic rebirth itself? So that's why I got a reading, and I'm taking a lot of time to really like reflect on the dark night of the soul and seeing what am I bringing forward with that in terms of how I serve, integrating it all so I can bring that medicine through. So as we come out of a dark night of the soul, it's another unknown period, but it is definitely a very exciting time, you know, where we feel like there's a certain level of hermit life that is complete. And I think Teal Swan did say that about 2025. It's the time where we're complete soul alignment, coming back out into community and connection and socialization. And I'm definitely feeling that. And if you're not feeling that, that's okay too. There's no rules. Yeah, another point for me coming in now as well is like, now I feel ready. Now I'm starting to feel ready to really root down. You know, as someone said to me a few years ago, Spirit wants you to stay in the one place and serve and teach. And now I'm feeling ready to do that. But like, again, couldn't be forced. And I definitely needed to come to Kerry and get my initiations and healing here. And now I'm really starting to feel ready to be like, where do I want to live for a long period of time? Like, I actually am really excited to make that move to, like, that's a big thing when you're in a dark night of the soul. You just don't have a fucking clue. Um, I remember, I don't know, was it like maybe 2022? My dad was like, I think he was just really struggling seeing me going through the dark night of the soul, not knowing what it is even. Like, I know what it is, he didn't. And he was like, where we were out doing the veggies. He was like, where do you see yourself in a year's time, Elaine? And it was funny. I was like, I needed to give him an answer, you know. I sure hadn't a fucking clue. I was like, I don't even know tomorrow da. And I still don't know the answer now, where I'll be in a year. Like, that's all matrixy stuff too. Like, but I think, you know, this need to know uncertainty. Uh, and at times in life we will know where we might be, but well, we do we though? Anyways, I just said to him, "Oh, I see myself in Kerry," which is interesting. Um, and it took me another 3 or 4 years to actually get here. So there is a slowness and a ripeness. It's not. I think, especially when we're on a spiritual awakening path and a dark night of the soul, it's not this like instantaneous manifestation. Definitely not for me, in my experience, when we're in a dark night of the soul. Patience and trust, and the most important thing is our healing and our awakening journey over all these things in the external. They will come naturally. Like, I've seen that in my life. And actually, when I stopped seeking, they came. Less is more, like, for sure. That'll be another episode. Less is more, you know. Um, and only for my womb, and my therapist, I think I would have ran ahead and acted prematurely many times, as in I would have birthed work because I feel like I should be serving, and God, I've taken enough time off and everything, right? But my therapist was always bringing me back to my root, and so was my womb. Um, and at the same time, my womb wanted me to serve in ways that were nourishing and rooted, and that's what the journey my womb has brought me on. Um, but there was just a progress, there was just a process, and it just took time, you know. Um, and I remember like seeing a video by someone who has like a lot of followers on YouTube and Instagram, like hundreds of thousands, right? And it was a man, and he was like, "There's no such thing as divine timing. You must just act now, and there'll never be a right time." And I remember thinking, "You don't have a womb, man. You don't know what you're talking about," because there is actually, in my experience. In my experience here, I don't want to be saying he's wrong, but I think for women, especially with our bleeds and our cyclical ways, I think for men as well, that I do actually believe there is a divine timing with things. I can see now how, like, if I had acted before now, um, it would have been coming from the wrong place, that I should. And just on that, obviously, I did birth um, triple spiral healing at the equinox last year. But the message was very clear that it flowed through in the end very easily. Like the website and getting the logo, it came through within a week. But I knew that it was going to be a slow burner, that the energy wasn't there to bring through everything that needed to be brought through with it. And it would be, I feel like it's a lifetime's work. So like it's a new way of creating and birthing, I think, now in the new earth. It's not for me instant manifestation and go, go, go. I knew it was going to be a slow burner. And I'm really glad I listened to that, because now that I'm out of a certain period or season in my life, let's say a big dark night of the soul, if you want, if I can put it that way. Now I really, really, really have a sense of what triple spiral healing needs to be in terms of like the people I'm serving and what feels in flow and authentic for me, you know. Um, and our soul work, it's not a fixed point, it's always evolving depending on our internal state of consciousness, you know. So it's like, I'm really glad I birthed it last year and knew, yeah, it doesn't have to be bam, bam, bam straight away, you know. There's a process, and I am very connected to the seasons and the cyclical ways and my bleed. So like, just been patient with its journey. So yeah, that's important to say, because I just think, honestly, our default is um, pumping stuff out and hustling. And it's a real courageous journey to actually surrender to the dark night of the soul, surrender to a specific season that we're in. Maybe it's an internal winter for many years, and actually listen to that and honor that, and trust in the money will come from somewhere. You know, that is a big, 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 big level of trust, which brings us to a high state of consciousness as well. You know. So yes, many threads here, isn't there? Another little incident or experience is just coming to my mind, which I'll share as well. Is I remember it was winter solstice 2021, and we'd just been to Newgrange for the solstice, and me and my friend went to Douth afterwards. And I remember saying a prayer out saying, please help me see what my mission is, and help me, show me how I can serve. And if I could give any advice to that person, was just let it all go for a while. It's okay not to know. It'll come, you know. Eckhart says it in The New Earth. There's a time, well, no, the internal mission is the most important mission. And the external, when the time is ripe, we will come back out and serve. And he does actually say, you know, there is a time where we're in between, where our old way of serving no longer serves us or is not in alignment. And there's a period of uncertainty and unknown. I just wish I had known that at that time. That I didn't need to be out, servant, that I just needed to heal and serve and be with the dark night of my soul and remember all the ancient wisdom that would help me to then serve in a more whole, wise, embodied, nourishing way. So, if you're still with me, you're an absolute legend, because I feel like I don't know how long I've been talking, but it's definitely been a long time. And it is getting late, so you can probably hear it in my voice. So yeah, Sinead, let me just sum it up. The dark night of the soul. Yeah, wow, what a beautiful, beautiful thing that it can be, as I've spoken into. But yeah, I really wanted to share the uncertainty and the rawness of it all. So I hope that's come across, that, you know, it's not always, it's definitely yeah, a scary and difficult initiation as well. I remember saying to my friends, this was 2022, I think, I was like, if there was a New Art hospital, I'd be checking myself in. Because I just was not able to like function. There was just so much death and shedding and grief. Thank God I would had my mum, who was cooking me organic meals most evenings. You know, I just owe her so much for just giving me so much as I navigated that awakening, you know, or that dark night of the soul. So allowing yourself to receive if possible. Yeah, and just knowing, lads, that a time will come where you will feel like the richest person on earth, because you'll have shed all of the shit. Not all of the shit, but a lot of it. You know, you'll shed a lot of the fear consciousness and really come into your authentic true self. It's inevitable, you know, and the triple spiral at Newgrange, you know, that's what a lot of people say. It's the triple spiral: death, life, rebirth. Our ancient ancestors were showing us that death will always lead to rebirth. And we have to allow the death to happen. We have to surrender to the death and ask God and the divine and the ancestors to be with us, to help us, to call on the sacred waters, to call on community to help us. Yeah. So I wish you so many blessings and love as you navigate the dark night of the soul and the spiritual awakening and this magical but intense time on planet Earth. Like, it's, you know, to be here and to be awake is such a gift, and just be so proud of yourself, and continue to trust and just deeply, deeply nourish yourself and be compassionate with yourself. So yeah, I am sending you so much love from these beautiful lands in Kerry. And I have a feeling I will be back again soon, because, as I said, there's a lot to be shared. So, slán go fóill, ma anam carja, and I will chat to you soon. Take care. Slán.